Hello, empowered warriors. Welcome to episode 38. I think so many of you today are going to benefit by listening to today's podcast and hearing my next guest, Jan Mead's story on her personal journey with trying to conceive and now how she helps women try to conceive naturally. It's very, very powerful. And for those of you who are trying to conceive, maybe you have been trying for weeks, months, years, many years. I know it's not uncommon. I used to work in fertility when I had my acupuncture practice, and it is so common to not be able to conceive a child. And it is heartbreaking, isn't it? So Jan is a licensed physical therapist, a licensed acupuncturist, and a yoga instructor who specializes in women's health, specifically natural fertility solutions. And it was inspired by her own experience with infertility for 6 years. Through her own experience and research, she has developed a system known as the 3 keys to unlock fertility naturally. So you're going to hear this conversation. You're going to learn about her journey and how specifically she helps women who are trying to conceive now using natural solutions. So without further ado, I am so excited. I can't wait for you to hear this episode. Please welcome Jan Meads. Welcome to the Empowered Warrior Podcast. My name is Angela Noel, and I am an intuitive coach, acupuncturist, and Chinese herbalist. This podcast is all about empowerment, meaning how you can maintain your personal power in order to have the best life beyond your imagination. An empowered warrior is someone who has the identity of a person who is healthy, radiant, and free from all suffering, and has the tools ready and available to move through life's obstacles with confidence, ease, and a sense of freedom. In this podcast, I bring over 16 years experience in Chinese medicine, countless years of self-development, and a passion for helping others find their personal power. I will be discussing just a few of my favorite topics regarding health from a Chinese medicine perspective, brain habits, and spirituality, so that you can quickly pave your pathway to freedom and be free from the chains that have kept you stuck. My intention with this podcast is to serve as a guide for warriors who want to form a healthy foundation of body, mind, and spirit, and sustain it by changing who they are being from the inside and having a stronger connection to their higher selves. My goal is to help students end the unnecessary suffering that they place on themselves by having poor health habits, negative thought loops, and a lack of self-worth. I'm so happy that you're here. Hello, empowered warriors. Welcome to another episode. I'm so excited because today I have another very special guest, Jan Mead. Hi, Jan. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you and just hear how you help people. So if you could just really quickly, or as much time as you need,
Yes.
let the audience know a little bit about who you are and how you help people.
Yeah, so I am both a licensed physical therapist and acupuncturist and certified yoga instructor, and I've been in the healing arts for many, many years, 30 years, probably a little bit more than the official licensure occurred, right? So I feel like, I was sort of born into this profession. But yes, I've had many different evolutions through my career, but over the last 10 years, just from my own personal experience, I became very interested in women's health specifically. And right now, one of my very big focuses one of my big specialties is working with women who are experiencing fertility challenges, couples, I guess I should say. And So that's something that I feel very passionate about, just simply because it's something that I personally experienced and several of my close family members also experienced. And so because of that, it led me down this road. And yeah, I'm very passionate about helping women with natural solutions to that experience.
Thank you so much for that. And I love, what you said, so much of what you said. First of all, a physical therapist, an acupuncturist, and a yoga instructor. So those are so many tools that you have that you could help your clients. So I'm just curious to know what specifically or how specifically, when you mention the natural solutions to fertility and women's health, how you help them.
Yeah, so it may help to start with my own experience of because that informed my whole journey of even getting into women's health because for many years I really was a pain specialist, being a physical therapist and acupuncturist. Pain was just my gig, right? So, women's health wasn't, not that there isn't pain, related to that, but it really just wasn't on my radar. But I had had a successful pregnancy and birth with my daughter, with my first child, and then after that, 2 years later, had another successful pregnancy initially, but then that ended up in an ectopic pregnancy, an emergency surgery. I was working with a midwife, so I thought I just had a miscarriage, but really there was still a fetus in my fallopian tube, and so it ended up being quite an emergency surgery. I was bleeding internally, so it was kind of a traumatic experience. But it was left with one fallopian tube, but I was still very determined, to have another child because I just really felt like I was meant to have two. Um, and so after that experience, another 4 years went by, and just I had one miscarriage in that time period that again was very devastating because I thought, oh, this is it. But 6 weeks into that, things deteriorated. So at that point, my husband and I thought, well, maybe we just give up, but I wasn't quite ready. And I was also I was like 40, 41. And then I come to find myself at 42. And my husband was like, look, I think that, maybe we need to consider just letting this go. And, intellectually it made sense. But in my heart, I was like, I have this dream of this little boy with a tow head standing in his crib, and I have this dream repeatedly. And I just, and
Wow.
it was so real to me that I was like, I I just feel like there's a spirit wanting to come in. So I was like, okay, verbally I'm like agreeing to this, but spiritually in my heart, I was like, I know something else.
Mhm.
So it just didn't make sense, but I was like, okay, I'm willing to let go. Maybe it's my little spirit child. And so but lo and behold, not too long after that, I spent a week with one of my mentors from Myofascial Release. And, you know, first part of that is receiving treatment. It's really important that we receive it and feel it in our own bodies. And through that process, he just recognized right away, oh, you need to have some pelvic floor work, some pelvic work. Are you okay with that? And I was like, well, of course, because I trust him completely. I've been studying with him for over 10 years. And so I so after that session, I had the most amazing experience. There was a lot of pain, a lot of restriction. So in just describing this specifically, it was pelvic floor work. There was some internal work being done, but um, I was holding on to a lot more than I thought I was. I mean, a lot of pain, restriction. There was a lot of emotion that came out, anxieties, fears. I could feel it like lifting and then releasing out of my body. It was the most amazing experience. And I'd had similar experiences before, but nothing this dramatic really. And so I mean, I really felt like a completely different person afterwards. After I walked out of that treatment room, I was like, wow, a huge shift has just occurred. And I knew that. Um, I didn't really equate that with like, oh, now I can get pregnant, but um, one, 2 or 3 weeks after I got home, um, I was pregnant with,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
That
So
happened so fast.
yeah, it was like immediate. Like I went to that,
Oh,
got home, got pregnant. And it was really, I had one session, one pelvic floor session with my teacher. So that was huge. And I thought I was really, connected to my body. I really felt like, oh, well, I should be able to figure this out. I really did not know. And because I was probably I was a bit disconnected from that area. And I had not realized it. And I realized how important really receiving help is. And two, it really opened my eyes to how important this work for women's health is. And I thought, well, I am dedicated. I am going to, get training. I'm going to help other women in this way. And so, so I proceeded to do more training with him and with some other teachers for women's health physical therapy, and then also leveraging my acupuncture training and focusing it a little bit more on fertility and women's health issues. Um, and so I've begun that journey and have been able to help many women since, which is so satisfying.
wow, Jan. I mean, thank you. First of all, I want to just honor you for sharing your story. I feel like many warriors in the audience will certainly get some nuggets from your story and be able to relate to you. When you mentioned this toe-headed blonde boy in your dream, I got full body chills.
Yeah.
Um, and just this knowing that you had like, there was this almost like this little, what I heard from you is this battle going on almost between your, intellectual, analytical mind and your heart. But you knew
Yeah.
deep down that, it wasn't time to quit. And I just want to really drive that home to anyone listening out there, that because so many, as you know, there's so many people. I used to work with fertility in my acupuncture practice, and the women would come in, my patients, and say, oh my gosh, it was like, and not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's like a factory. And often they may or may not have known that they needed the extra care and support in addition to their IVF fertility treatment. So I love how you mentioned the pelvic floor and you mentioned the release and the restriction, because I think a lot of women don't realize
Yeah.
how restricted they are.
Right. You may not really feel that way, but many women having periods, maybe painful periods,
Mhm.
oftentimes,
Yeah.
endometriosis and those types of things. And,
Yep.
we begin to little by little disconnect ourselves from that first and second chakra area, as things come up every month and we have difficulties that make us come out of our body, so to speak.
Mhm.
And then that connection is never reformed. And so even if there is stuff going on, specifically restrictions or it may be really hard to be aware of until it's actually evaluated and checked. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
these things are not only, they don't only show up physically. I mean, it's an energetic piece as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and I think it's important to honor that aspect of ourselves because it may be on an energetic level, it may not necessarily be showing fully on a physical level, but it's still there. The imbalance is still there nonetheless.
And can you just elaborate a little bit more? I talk about energy and kind of I get out there sometimes with the audience, but I would love to hear your perspective, Jan, on when you mention you mentioned the physical symptoms, so painful periods, endometriosis, and other signs and symptoms that could be related to that restriction in the pelvic floor. But what do you notice or what do you see in your practice as signs of energetic restriction or energetic manifestations relating to infertility?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of well, one of my patients, Jenny, and it was so dramatic for me because it was almost like working on myself, really, because her story was so similar to mine. She'd had a child to begin with, had but had somewhat of a traumatic birth, ended up having a C-section, and then again it was like same time frame as myself, 6.5, 7 years. Had been pregnant multiple times, but never carry. Had tried IVF. I mean, she had actually tried that and it had failed. And so I mean, she had significant scar tissue. She had recurrent bladder infections, and these things were not even on her radar as issues that could be contributing until we discussed it. And so again, I think it's just that, and she also had pain with intercourse, and the whole thing was just it, and to her it was just like, well, this is just the way it is, and didn't really know that there was a possibility or that this type of therapy even existed, that all of those things could be improved. And so I think I'm speaking about that energetic disconnect, in that there's things that are very awry, but they're just accepted and not like addressed, or not addressed by Western medicine often,
Yeah.
and so then it's just accepted that it's just there. It's just going to be with me, this is just something that I have to deal with. And so that affects us very deeply on an energetic level, when you're having to deal with these, tensions in the body that's affecting our nervous system. It's like we have to compromise ourselves on not only a physical level, but an energetic level. And thankfully with her, we really just started addressing the scar tissue for her C-section. And I think so she had 7 years unable to have a successful pregnancy. After 4 weeks of working with her, she became pregnant, and we were also using acupuncture as well, but she became pregnant and ended up having a successful pregnancy. So she still sends me Christmas cards with her, her growing family, and it's just
Lovely.
so fantastic. But yeah, and like the trust in her body really shifted. She was just describing how she really felt a lot more solid in her body. She felt a lot more connected with herself. She didn't realize how disconnected she felt within her body prior to the treatment. And then after, she was just like, again, I feel like a different person. I feel like I can be present in my body. So I think
So powerful.
if that describes somewhat the energy of what you might feel, just that disconnection, and not even knowing, not even be able to put your finger on what that is.
Yeah, you just know that something, you just have a feeling that something is off. You're not quite sure. I remember having patients come in saying, I know my body, and I'm oftentimes they'll go to their their doctor, their fertility specialist, and they'll be like, I know something's off. I know it. Like, and only you warriors can know, because you're living in this body 24/7. Like you're the only one that can determine that something is off. So I love that message too that you're sending, Jan, that in your experience, that we are we are so powerful, and we do have the ability, if something is wrong, right, if something just doesn't feel right or balanced, or like you mentioned, disconnected, like there is something that is something to look at and pay attention to.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really, really great to have that outside perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who maybe have some skills in medical intuition or whatever that can sense things on not only a physical level but an energetic level, so that can help guide and put words to what the disconnection is. I know some people are like, oh wow, yeah, that makes so much sense.
It's very validating, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I might sometimes be working on, I mean, it may be pelvis pelvic floor, but it could be like upper back or something. And, there's just a strong sense of like, oh, well, there's issues from the past that are still really weighing down on this area. And it's manifesting as a really tight and painful thoracic spine. But, when there's that immediate sense, when you put your hands on them, you might speak something like that to somebody and they're like, there might be a chuckle or like, wow, yes, I know exactly what that is, too, and they just need a little, maybe just a little nudge to make that connection of like, our biology is our biography. What we've lived is what our body is now manifesting.
So true. So true. And every body tells a story.
Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So if a client comes to, first of all, you have a physical practice? You also have a virtual practice as well, Jen?
I do. Yeah, I do. Just because of the interest, there's certain things I can't do, hands-on, but there's so much you can do just by an interview. There's three keys that I kind of go by, the three keys to unlocking infertility. And the first one is aligning, and that's working on the structure, the pelvis, the pelvic floor. And there's a lot of ways to evaluate that, just visually, and then there's a lot of tools that can be given to, as far as home exercise programs, to begin working on that. Not necessarily hands-on, but there's a lot that individuals can do, which can be really powerful if you're, working and connecting for yourself. And then the second one is harmonizing. And I also find that many women have underlying issues that are also contributing. Food allergies, food sensitivities is a big one, autoimmune issues, um, severe anxiety, which indicates some, nervous system overload. And also, could be chronic pain, or having to take medications for something. And so I always can help women work through those, through diet, through supplementation as well. And then, well, also I've developed a system of yoga that integrates the meridians in the Chinese medicine system in with the movement. And so if there's a specific meridian or energy center that needs to be worked on, I can give those specific simple yoga practices, that will begin to help balance and align the meridians in a different way than acupuncture, but still working on those same energies. And then just the support factor. We go through work and career, we go through relationship, we go through support needed afterwards, because I typically find also for women that there may be some conflicts of like, yeah, I really am worried about how things are going to go if I do have a child, and how am I going to work that out with work, or um, I don't have, I live far away from family and I'm not sure what type of support. I really feel like I'm going to need support and I don't have any support structures. So I think that couples, and I should include the partner in with this as well, don't oftentimes take that into consideration, that could also be impacting the ability to become pregnant, because if there's those stressors and, as I was describing before, that conflict of like, well, I know this, but this is what I'm presenting. There may be some internal conflicts that's, affecting, the nervous system or creating stress in some way, that may not be um, super conscious that it is affecting us or affecting our ability to conceive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love. I mean, that just feels like the whole package right there, as far as how you help people. Because, I mean, I love everything that you're saying. I remember when I had my practice, like I felt sometimes like there had to be something. Acupuncture is amazing, as you know, right? Herbal medicine is amazing, and I love how you combine all these beautiful practices together into one, because I feel like patients patients really need, like you mentioned, the support, right? And the pelvic floor. And anyway, I just think it's amazing how you support clients in this very really unique and special way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
so I guess virtually, I do oftentimes do what's called roadmap to fertility or roadmap
Yeah.
to natural conception. And so, we go through and evaluate each one of these levels and just kind of determine, create a, because this is what I wanted, right? I wanted this. When I was having issues, I would have loved having somebody that I could go to, work through all these levels and come up with a plan, This
Yeah.
is the plan, this is what you need, this is where your priority is. Number one priority, number two priority, number three priority. And then, if there is, like, say, there is pelvic floor, a need for pelvic floor, while I do have a few clients that do come in for week retreats, and work with me intensively, if that's not possible, then I will help them do research for their local area and find a practitioner that would be suited for them to work with, both on a level of pelvic floor work and as well, and or acupuncture if that seems like that would be a good fit too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's aligning and prioritizing so these couples know where to put their energy, where that is best utilized. So you're not just like throwing a dart at, like, well, you're like, I don't know, there's all these things to try.
Yeah.
But we can kind of hone in on what your story is and what would be the best, most logical plan to follow.
And what would you say is the percentage of your practice? Do you work with patients or clients primarily in your office or virtually, or is it like a healthy combination of both?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. I would say right now, majority, 60, 70% is in person, and then the other 30% is virtual or online.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. And I'm just curious to know, since one of the things that I touch upon often in the podcast is that anything is possible, and I feel like you already touched upon that with what your story earlier,
Mhm.
and then you mentioned your client's story. That really, anything is possible, and I'm just curious to know if you have any, other stories in your life or words of wisdom to offer the listeners that really anything is possible.
Yes, I think my first experience with that was like my husband and I, we weren't married at the time, but we had dated for a year. We decided to sell everything and take off across country on our bicycles. We were gonna go around the world, but didn't quite make it that far. But
Yeah.
and one of the ideas that we were working with on this journey was this whole idea, and this was in 1999,
Yeah.
this whole idea of the law of attraction, and you can manifest things immediately. Well, when you're on the road traveling like that, and you've run out of food and you need food right away, or I think one of the most dramatic ones was like it was like we're somewhere in Northern California. It was gonna like pour rain. There was like all these farmers fields and no place to camp, and very far from where we were going to land. And we were like, okay, we need to, let's like focus on what we want. It's like, let's find some farmers going to let us like spend the night in their barn. That would be the best, right? That would be awesome right now. Well, I am not kidding. Probably like we rode our bikes for another 20 yards, and this guy was almost like he came out of nowhere. Like rides up right along the fence on his four-wheeler and like waves at us and stops. And so we stop on our bikes and he's like, well, looks like the weather's going to turn on you. Do you want to camp in my barn?
No way. No way. That's amazing.
And we were like, yeah. And he's like, but then he's like, but I just had somebody move out of this trailer house that I have over here. You guys, why don't you guys just stay there for the night? You can have a kitchen, you can have a shower, you can, just take it over. And so, yeah. And right as we walked in the doors, it just started dumping. It was like a deluge. And so I think from that moment, it was just so dramatic, right? And that's informed my whole life. Even going through the fertility thing, it's like, okay, well, it's a timing thing. I'm visualizing this. I know that I want this, but yes, I think that also has pushed me forward. And there are so many more examples of that throughout that trip. It was really amazing. But whenever I hit like a tough point or a struggle, it's like I know that there's going to be resolution. I have this knowing because I know the universe works in that way.
I love that. I love everything about that story. I can certainly attest and relate to that in that really there is the universe does work in our favor, and I feel that as human beings we often get in our own way really with trying to overthink like and worry and stress and I feel like there's a lot of lessons right in that process, but really there is so much divine grace available to us at
Yeah.
all times
Mhm.
and really we can manifest is I think the key is what I heard there was almost not a lot of attachment. Am I right when you were talking about finding that
Right.
that place
Yeah.
to stay, like you're kind of like, oh, put it out there and then detach.
Yeah, right. Then kind of let go because you're on the road. It's like, well, we might get wet, but that's not a huge deal, right?
Right.
Versus, I want to have a baby and there's like a little bit more of a
Yes.
like holding on to that idea. It's like I want it now, but then it's also trusting, the timing really ended up being very good.
Yeah.
Um, and when I look back any other time other than when it actually occurred, there would have been some more challenges I think than when my pregnancy actually did occur and the birth. And so, and if it's just timing for when the child needs to be born at a certain day and a certain time when the energies are all aligned, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Do you
part of
do
that is trusting.
Wait, I just thought of something, so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when you're talking about the timing and the divine energies, do you ever dig into human design at all? Are you familiar
I
with that?
No, I'm not familiar with that. The
You
human
might,
design.
yeah, human design. And I'm learning myself. I just got some books out of the library, and I've been listening to some podcasts. But when you mention like that divine timing, human design is so much about that. It's like it's a combination, I think, of the I Ching,
Okay.
astrology, and like 4 or 5 different systems, right? There's science in there, and it's basically the idea that you have this chart, based on your time of birth, and this is totally off the cuff here, but
Oh, that sounds cool.
the time of your birth, where you were born, um, what else are some of the other things, the year, your date, everything, and you put it into this, and you can go online. There's free websites that will give you your chart, and you can find out based on that chart certain things about you that are very unique to you and your human design, and it's really cool. And anyway, I was just listening to a podcast about it the other day where there was an expert on human design. She said her theory is that we all choose the date and time and place of birth before we even get here. So if you're into that kind of thing, you might want to consider just looking into it because it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It gets a little complicated, but yeah.
No, I love that. I love that combination too, because yeah, I do. I mean, I'm not an expert at astrology at all, but I've studied a little bit, and because of this sound healing system that I used to teach and still incorporate into my work. But that, and then the I Ching is what the form of acupuncture, the Dr. Tan balance method that I use, is really based a lot
Oh,
on the
yeah,
I
Dr.
Ching.
Tanner,
So
yeah.
yeah, so that combination is sounds fantastic. I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah, yeah, it can get a little addicting if you're, you can really nerd out on it. It's fascinating with like, basically it tells you, and what I've learned so far has been really accurate, how to best spend your energy and where to put your energy. So
Yeah,
you're not always like throwing like darts, at the wall
yeah.
and seeing like this, and I found that it's pretty accurate. So anyway,
Oh, that is great. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
because sometimes we can come up with so many ideas and have so many interests that you can't possibly do them all at once. So it's like, well, how do you choose?
Exactly. How do you choose? I love that. So, Jan, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience, or any words of wisdom or any nuggets that you would like to share?
I just really, one of my big goals is to really spread this message that achieving fertility naturally is completely doable. It's what our bodies were designed to do. And if it's not happening, there's a reason why it's not happening. And it is certainly, we're able to discover what that may be. It's not all about hormones. It really can be, and usually I find it is a multitude of factors from multiple layers. And
Hmm.
so I just, you know, I want women to know they have more than just, one or two options. There are a lot of options available and support available too. If that's the journey that those women are on, I feel a lot of compassion, because it's can be a real struggle emotionally and physically.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly true. It can be, and I think, I just remember some of my clients just feeling that sense of unrest. Either they feel this disappointment in their bodies, that their bodies are letting them down, or they think that something's wrong with them, and they really just they don't know that there are, and because Western medicine doesn't necessarily always touch upon these things, right?
Right. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
that there
It's
is.
so nice to be like, this, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this, all of these things can be contributing. And the wonderful thing is
Yeah,
you can do things about this whole list.
absolutely, it's very empowering, and I just want to recognize your work is so needed in this world. And I love how you've combined everything so beautifully, and you share your story. So thank you for sharing and being here today, Jan.
Oh, absolutely. It's my absolute pleasure.
And I have a couple more questions for you. What does impact mean to you?
Yeah, so I feel like I've been, impacted by many experiences in my life, and impact to me means a a big shift, like a palpable shift. Impact is like, at the moment that it occurs.
Mhm.
And I think this is an aha. It is knowledge. It's maybe it's a physical shift, a mental shift. It could be emotional, or it could be energetic. It could be on all levels at once.
Yeah.
But it's something that we come in contact with a person or an experience. Maybe it's a beautiful sunset, or it's an amazing thing that we've never seen before, um, or just an amazing person. But that impact and that shift is felt immediately. There's like a yes in the body of, like, this, something has changed. Something is going to be different from this moment forward,
Wow.
always.
That's so beautifully described. I love how you been, yeah, how you kind of put shi yeah, the immediate, palpable shift that you feel right away, and like
Mhm.
there's this knowing, and almost like
Mhm.
the word that comes to mind is this release or this freedom that happens as a result of this impact or shift.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a moment of immediate expansion, maybe.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful, Jan. Thank you. So, how can the warriors listening find you?
Yeah. So they can find me. My website is Sacred Pathways Integrated Health.com. Also, just email. It's at janmeadptlac.com, and I welcome emails and questions. Happy to help and answer in any way I can. And also, just for my business phone can be text or give me a call is 719
Awesome. And that will also be, I'll put those in the show notes for anybody that missed it or you're driving and you didn't get it right away. It will be in the show notes for this particular episode. So, Jan, thank you so much. It was a
Yes.
pleasure meeting you and talking to you and hearing how you help empower others and help them in their expansion. Like, I just feel like this conversation was very expansive and inspirational for anyone listening, especially if you are going through fertility or having any kind of health issue as a woman. Like,
Right.
your work is needed.
Yeah, this can expand certainly beyond just not just fertility, but it can definitely expand beyond. It's how I work with all the women that come in with the various issues in addition to the fertility. But
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jan.
yes, thank you for having me. It was very enjoyable.
My pleasure. Okay, warriors, until next time, I will see you on the next episode. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Empowered Warrior podcast. It is an honor and a privilege to have you as a listener. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast and would like to help others pave their pathway to freedom, end their disempowerment and suffering, and become an empowered warrior, please share this podcast with your friends and family. Also, it is my intention to help humanity grow and evolve to their highest potential. So if you really enjoy what you're hearing, please help me spread the word by leaving a review in iTunes. Thank you again, and I am so grateful to be able to serve you in this very exciting way.